Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then welcome. My name is Maddie, and today I will be doing my February wrap-up. First, I want to acknowledge the fact that I am filming in front of a bookshelf now. In my recent videos, I have been filming in front of this bookshelf, but I've only had some of my books on it. The top shelves were filled with other stuff, but now I have all my books on it, and oh, I'm just so happy. Like, have a bookshelf. Again, I missed having one. Anyway, today I will be sharing the books that I read in February. I read a total of 11 books. 11 or 12. I think it's 11, which 11 is great. I am now currently in a bit of a reading slump, so my reading slowed down this month, but still I was able to read a lot, so I am happy about that. So let's just get into all the books that I read this month in order from when I read them. First, I will mention the books that I did DNF this month. I actually DNF'd a lot of books this month because I ended up getting into a little bit of a reading slump, and I was not in the mood for the majority of what I was reading, sadly. However, all except one of these books I do plan to get back to at a later time. It just wasn't the right time for me to read these books because of the slump I was in, but I think if I pick these books up again another time, I'll be able to actually enjoy them more. So the first one is A Curse So Dark and Lonely. This is a new release and it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so I was really excited for this one because I love retellings and I love Beauty and the Beast retellings. It started off okay, but I just kind of found myself a little bored by the beginning of it. It just wasn't capturing my attention right away, so I decided to put it down. Might get back to it again. I might give it another try, especially because I've heard so many people do really love this book. So I don't know, but I'm not going to pick it up again anytime soon. This next one is one I don't plan to get back to, and that is Shadow Crown by Kristen Martin. I'm doing kind of an experiment where I go through the books on my Goodreads TBR and I try out the lowest rated books on my TBR and see what I think of them. So this was one of the lowest rated books on my Goodreads. So I decided to pick it up and I got about a few chapters in until I was not really feeling it, which I was really disappointed because Kristen Martin is a YouTuber and she is actually an author tuber. So she gives out writing advice and I've always been a fan of her channel, so I was really let down when I did not end up enjoying her book. Oh, it hurt so bad. But I still want to give her other series a try, which is called the Alpha Drive series, and see if I like that one more, but Shadow Crown did not work for me, so I was really sad about that, and unfortunately will not be getting back to it. The next one is a really popular book, and that is Children of Blood and Bone. This one really hurt. Because this book is so popular, I really wanted to love it. I read the first chapter and I was not feeling it, but that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna try it again. I just think I picked it up at the wrong time. So I do want to give it another try. Though it wasn't piquing my interest within the first chapter, I can see that it does have potential, so I really want to give it a second chance and see what I think of it then. So I will try this one out again later. And the last one that I DNF that I do plan to get back to is All the Ugly and Wonderful Things. I definitely read this book at the wrong time. I think reading an adult book in a time where I'm in such a slump was not a good idea. Just because adult books can be very deep sometimes, and this is a book that was definitely too deep for me to read when I was not feeling like reading, so it wasn't a wise idea to pick this one up during a slump. But I do want to give it another chance. I was into it. I just think based on the fact that I was getting into a slump, I was not enjoying it because of that. And I don't think I was giving the book a fair chance. So I do want to try it again. This one is a taboo book that deals with pedophilia, and honestly, it actually did make me a little uncomfortable. Like, I love taboo books, but this one is just pushing it. Something about pedophilia just is almost too much for me, and that's saying something because I love taboo books, but this one made me a little uncomfortable, but I still want to give it a chance. And the last two books that I DNF'd are ones that I do want to keep reading. I just didn't get a chance to finish them before February ended. The first one is Obsidian by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Yes, I am rereading this book for the third time. because I love this series. I'm actually rereading it so that I can do a review and discussion on it, and I kind of just want to go back over it and familiarize myself with what happened in the book and all the scenes that I want to mention in my discussions, so that's why I am rereading it again. I can really never get enough of this series. And this next book that I am going to continue in March is Hopeless by Colleen Hoover. I am like on a Colleen Hoover binge read right now. I just want to read all her books after I read one of her books this month that I will mention in this wrap-up that I just adored, so I want to read all of her books, and so far I am enjoying Hopeless. It is setting up to be a very emotional read, so I feel like I'm going to shed some tears with this one, and I've heard this one is kind of sad and emotional, but I am still looking forward to reading it in March and finishing it. So those were all of my DNFs. Now let's just get into all the books that I read in February. I probably will not be mentioning the summaries to these books just because my wrap-ups lately have tended to get so long because I am reading a lot more books recently in a month. So I'm just gonna not talk about the summary of the books unless it's super necessary because I don't want this video to be too long because they've been like over a half hour long lately and I just don't want to have to put you guys through sitting through such a long video. But you can always look up these books on Google, on Goodreads to find out the summaries of them. So the first book that I read in February is Love, Life, and the List by Casey West. I meant to read this book when it first came out. Didn't happen, but I am so glad I finally got to it. Book summary on this one. This one is about a girl who wants to get into this art program, but she's told that her art does not have enough heart and emotion in them to be accepted. So she makes a list of things to experience that she hopes will help her gain more experience and therefore have her put more heart and emotion into her artwork. I really love the main character. I related to her so much because she is a creative person and I myself am a creative person. I'm a writer and I also am a musician, and even though she's an artist, I can't relate to being an artist because I cannot even draw for the life of me, but I could still relate to her struggles that come with having a creative career. She faces a lot of rejection, a lot of discouragement, and that's something I've felt as a creative person, so I was able to really relate to this character, which is one of the things I loved so much about this book. And I liked how this book really handled the fact that being a creative person is so hard and having a creative career is just difficult because art is so subjective and that causes for a lot of people's opinions about your artwork to really get to you and to really make you feel down and not confident in your work. So I just related to that so much. Also, the romance was so cute. This is a friends to lovers romance and the main character, Abby, is in love with her best friend and it's kind of an unrequited love scenario. So I was really into that. I was just rooting for them to be together. So I love this book so much. I'm glad I finally read it and I'm looking forward to reading more of Casey West's books. And I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I finally read Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I had been putting this book off for so long just because it is a sci-fi book, and sci-fi is not my favorite genre. It's actually like my least favorite genre ever. I am just not into sci-fi books. So I just kept putting this off and putting this off until finally I was like, let's give it a try. And unfortunately, the sci-fi elements made me not love this book as much as I wanted to. There were so many chapters and parts of the book that were very technical that I was just so bored by because I am not into that stuff. It always goes right over my head. So for the majority of this book, I was pretty bored. However, I did like the characters. I loved Cinder as the character. I felt like she was just a strong character. And a lot of the side characters I loved too. So this book wasn't all bad. I would say it was just okay, but definitely does not live up to the hype for me, which is just kind of a biased opinion because I am not a sci-fi reader, but I do wish I would have loved it more. But I am interested in reading Scarlet just because the last few pages of this book made me interested in wanting to try to read the rest of this series, so I'm gonna give Scarlet a try. So I give this one a 3 out of 5 stars. It was just a fine book. I do have a full review of it uploaded on my channel, so I will link it on the screen so you can find out my more in-depth thoughts about it. And then I read Deceiving Lies by Molly McAdams. This is the sequel to Forgiving Lies. I like this one. I think I liked it just a tad bit more than Forgiving Lies. This is a suspense romance duology, and I read the first book in January and really enjoyed it. I like this book a lot more because there is another character introduced who has a very troubled past, and he gets kind of involved with the main character. So there is actually a love triangle in this book, but I found myself rooting for the other guy and not the main guy from the first book that she's with so much. And because of that, it kind of made me not love Forgiving Lies as much and not love the main love interest as much anymore, because I'm like, this new guy, she deserves to be with him. And it's just funny because I love the main love interest in Forgiving Lies, but then I didn't end up loving him as much because I love this other guy more. So it's just kind of funny how that happened. Other than that, this was a solid book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Really want to continue reading Molly McAdams' books because I really loved this series. I really enjoyed it. Next, I read Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyun. I think it's Nyun. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. I picked this one up on a whim because it was the group book for the BookTube Games, which is kind of a read-a-thon that happened in February, so I decided to read it because of that, and I really liked it. This is a YA fantasy. Shortest summary I can say. It is about this girl who gets taken to the king of this world, and she is forced to be a paper girl, and paper girls are these group of girls that are chosen each year to serve the king and to serve him in really mature ways, if you know what I mean. So this one is it's a very, very triggering book. It has sexual assault, rape, abuse, so many triggers. What I like about this book, though, is that in the beginning of the book, it actually tells you what is in it, the triggering things that could be in it, and not a lot of books have trigger warnings in them, so I really appreciated that. So this isn't a book that everyone's going to like. This is a book that deals with very, very mature, hard-hitting subjects, but I still really liked it. This is also an LGBT romance, and I've never read an LGBT romance in fantasy, and there's actually not a lot of LGBT fantasy books, so this one is really diverse in that way, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked the main character. She was super strong. She tried everything she could to handle the situation she was in the best way possible. She was thrown into just such an awful situation, forced to be the king's basically sex slave, and she just was so brave, and she did everything she could to get herself out of it. So I just admire her. If I were in that situation, I would have just wouldn't have been able to done anything. I wouldn't have known what to do. So I really admired her bravery and how strong she was. And this is the first book in a trilogy, and I will for sure be continuing on with the rest of the books. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. I had been wanting to pick this book up from the first time I heard about it a couple months ago. This is a book that had been out since 2005, so it's a really old series, and I only heard about it recently, and come to find out it's a pretty popular paranormal series, and I was just kicking myself for not picking this book up sooner because I just really enjoyed it. I was really missing out. This is a book that is about vampires, and the vampire genre is kind of overdone, but that didn't mean I did not still enjoy this book. It is an adult paranormal, and so for that reason it was super steamy, and I've never read a steamy paranormal book, so I really enjoyed that. Really found out I like adult paranormal books, and I want to try out more of them because of this book. This is a super long series, but I am for sure going to read the rest of the books in this series. I am so excited to read the rest of the books, especially because I've heard this series just gets better and better, so Probably at some point I am going to binge read this series because I love the first book so much. Loved the characters, loved the romance, even though the romance kind of started off a bit insta-lovey, but the thing with this world is that the vampires kind of form a mating bond sometimes when they first meet. So because of that, I let the insta-love slide. It wasn't that big of a deal to me after a while because of that, so. Besides that, I just love this romance. It was super sweet. I do have a full review on this book, so I will link it on the screen so you can find out all my in-depth thoughts about it. I have a lot to say about this book, but since I have a review, just watch the review if you're interested because you'll know all my thoughts in that video. Next, this is my favorite book that I read this month. I am so excited to talk about it, and that is Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. Oh my god. I adore this book. I love it so much. It is still on my mind because I loved it that much. With Colleen Hoover, her books can be like a hit or miss for me. I've rated one of her books 4 stars, 2 5 stars, which is Ugly Love and Now Maybe Someday, and then her first book, Slammed, I did not like pretty much at all. I gave it like a 2 stars. So I never know how I'm going to feel going into her books, but thankfully with Maybe Someday, this turned out to be my favorite book by her so far. This one is about a girl who finds out that her boyfriend is cheating on her with her roommate. So she moves out of her apartment because she doesn't want to live with her roommate anymore and moves in with this guy who she's been watching from her balcony play guitar every single night. So he lets her stay with her and they start off a little bit of a relationship. They start to form feelings for each other, but there's something in the way of them being together that makes their romance really difficult and is the cause for a lot of angst. One thing I loved about this book is that it has a musician in it. Every time a book has something that has to do with music or is about a musician, I always know that I'm gonna enjoy it in some way, and that was the case with this book. But not only that, I just really loved these characters, and the romance was just incredible. It was so good. The way this romance was developed was done so well. The scenes where these two characters are writing music together were my favorite scenes out of the whole book, because during those scenes you really got to see their relationship develop and their connection grow, and I just love that. There is also something about this book that I can't mention because it's kind of a spoiler. I wish I could talk about it because it's actually like probably my favorite thing about this book. But one of these characters goes through something that makes life really hard for them, and I really loved that representation that is in it so much. So that's all I'm going to say on that. This book was just all around amazing. I will be doing a review and discussion on this book really soon, and in that I'll of course express all my thoughts on it, but for right now I'm just going to say I loved it so much. Read it if you haven't yet, and I of course gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, and so far it is my favorite book of 2019. Next, I read Fame, Fate, and the First Kiss by Casey West. This is a companion novel to Love, Life, and the List, but it is still a standalone. These two books still stand on their own. Fame, Fate, and the First Kiss follows one of the characters that was introduced in Love, Life, and the List. And I really like that because I loved Lacey in Love, Life, and the List, and she's the main character in this book. So I really wanted to know more about her, and for the most part, this book did not disappoint. In Fame, Fate, and the First Kiss, we also follow a main character who is very creative. She has a creative career. She is an actress, so we follow her in her journey through filming this movie that she's in, and she's kind of the star of. What I found the most interesting about this book is the movie set setting. This book goes in so much detail on what it's like being on a movie set, which was so cool. The relationship and romance in this book was really well done. It was super sweet. Even though I did not care for the love interest at first, he really grew on me, and therefore I really began to really feel for their relationship. One thing I wasn't expecting with this book is there's kind of a mystery subplot going on, which was done really well, but I feel like the way it was wrapped up didn't really satisfy me. There were a lot of loose ends that weren't really explained, so that led me to be kind of confused. So that's the reason why I knocked up a star for this book. This is the first Casey West book that I've read that I've not rated 5 stars. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, so it was still good, but as of right now, it is my least favorite Casey West book. Does not mean I did not enjoy it, though. Really loved it. Then I read When It's Real by Aaron Watt. I fell in love with these two authors' series, Paper Princess, the Royal series, so I was really anxious and really excited to get to the rest of their books that they have out so far. So I decided to pick up When It's Real next, and I liked it. This one is another book that has a musician in it, so because of that, I had a feeling I was going to love it, and overall, I did really enjoy it. This one also has kind of a fake relationship going on, and I'm just going to give the summary because the summary of this is so interesting, I don't even care. So this book is about this guy who is a musician, and his reputation has kind of gone downhill. He's done some things that have really tarnished his image, so to fix that, his PR has him date a normal girl. And their goal with him dating someone who is just like a regular girl is for him to look more wholesome because it makes him look like he's settled down. So they hire Vaughn to be Oakley, this musician's fake girlfriend, to help him improve his reputation. And that leads to kind of a fake relationship and also leads to them growing genuine feelings for each other. This is also an enemies to lovers relationship, so these two characters really do not like each other at first. But they start to grow on each other, and I really liked seeing that. However, one thing, I don't know what it is about this romance, but it just did not connect with me as much as I wanted it to, and I don't know why for the life of me. I'm thinking maybe it's because I've read so many hate to love romances lately that the trope is kind of just getting old with me. Maybe that's it, but for some reason I just was not feeling this romance as much as I wanted to. But that did not mean that this relationship was not really cute. I did really love it, especially towards the ending. These two were just so cute together, so I really felt for them after a while. And the biggest reason why I love this book is the fact that it is about a celebrity. Oakley is very big. He grew up in the spotlight, and because of that, life has not been very easy for him. He loves his job, he loves being a singer, but being a celebrity and being so famous has led him to not have as much freedom as he wishes he could have. And that also means that he's very unsure if his friends are friends with him because they genuinely like him, or if they're only associated with him because they're trying to get a piece of fame for themselves. And that leads him to be very lonely. So I really felt for him because of that. It makes me think of how many celebrities we know and love have to deal with these same things as a famous person, because famous people really don't have a lot of freedom. And when you think about it, it can be kind of a sad life. So I really felt for him and his situation. So I would recommend this book. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I wished I could have given it a 5, but there were a few things that I didn't love about it. Definitely not as good as the Royal series, but still really enjoyable. Next, I read a novella, and this was an erotica, and that is Stepdaddy Savage by Charlie Rose. I had been hearing so much about this author duo that I really did want to give one of their books a try, and I picked this one up for the Contemporary-a-thon because I needed a quick read since the read-a-thon was ending and I wanted to get another book in, so I counted this towards my challenge of to read a taboo book. And the reason this book is taboo is that this girl gets into a relationship with her stepfather, so very taboo. I mean, it was good. There wasn't a clear plot because it is an erotica. It's mostly just smut, but I still liked it. I found the relationship to be a little creepy though, because I was not expecting the girl to be 17 years old and her stepdad is like in his 30s. It kind of made me cringe. She does turn 18 in this book, so I mean, at least she is not underage when they screw for the first time, but it still kind of made me a little uncomfortable because she's still basically a teenager, so I really had a hard time dealing with that. And the last like sentence in this book. I won't reveal it because it is a spoiler, but I just sat there like, no, no. This is so wrong. This is so creepy. Oh my god. If you have read this book, then you probably know what I'm talking about. But other than that, I still liked it. I actually did like the main character. She was very spunky. And I am interested to reading the rest of the books in this little novella series. And I do want to check out more books by these two authors. A lot of their books have really interested me. So I am looking forward to trying out more of their books. I gave Stepdaddy Savage 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read a poetry collection, and that is Salt by an author whose name I cannot pronounce, so I'm not even going to try. This is a poetry collection basically about the author's experiences with racism and other challenges that she's gone through. So this book deals heavily on racism, which is great, but when I do read poetry, I do like to read stuff that I can relate to, and I cannot relate to racism because I am not a person of color. So unfortunately I could not relate to that, but I still did really like the poems. And so far out of all the poetry books I've only read Milk and Honey by Ruby Kaur and The Sun and Her Flowers, and now Salt. Salt is my favorite poetry collection I've read so far. I just really connected to these poems. Not the ones about racism, but she did include so many other poems that had to do with being a writer, which I really connected to. Poems that dealt with anxiety. So I really liked those poems a lot. I give this one a 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book I read is Between the Covers by a bunch of authors. This is an anthology that includes excerpts to these authors' books. So it has like the first 2 or 3 chapters to their book. So it basically is just like a sampler book for different books by these authors. And this is a new adult collection. So these are all new adult samples. I like this one. I initially did not know how to rate it because it isn't a whole book. It's just like a sampler collection. I settled on 3 stars just because it's not the best thing I've ever read, because it's only like a sampler, but I still enjoyed most of the excerpts that I did read out of this collection. There was only one few chapters of a book that I didn't really like, so I'm not really interested in, but all of the rest of the books I am really interested in reading the full book. And I put the most of these books on my TBR. I did not read all of the chapters because there are 3 authors in this collection that I have read before, which is, of course, Jennifer L. Armentrout and Cora Carmack and Molly McAdams, and I had already read their books, so I didn't really see a point in rereading the chapters or trying out the chapters to the books that I haven't read for them yet when I already know I'm for sure going to pick up those books. So why read a sampler when I'm already gonna pick them up eventually? So I just read the excerpts from the authors that I had never heard about before and hadn't heard about their books. So I'm excited to try out some new adult books from this collection. I think my favorite was it The Dark Heroine? And that one I think is actually kind of a YA book, and it is a paranormal book about vampires. So I was really digging it, so much so that I wanted to try out the book right away. So I'm gonna get to that one really soon because I'm really looking forward to that one the most out of all of the chapter samplers that I tried out of this collection. So that is it for my February wrap up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what books you read this month. What was your favorite book you read this month? I would love to know. If you guys liked the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos. I post on Twitter, so you should follow me there. The link for that is in the description box. I upload 2 to 3 times a week, so I will be back really soon. Bye. I still love the poems that dealt with racism, and oh my god, my eye is twitching. Do you guys see that? Stop twitching, it's distracting. Okay, I think it stopped.